I still can't believe it really happened. It went, it explored, it returned. We're talking Artemis II this week with NASA Ambassador Tony Rice from right here in the Carolinas. Plus, we're going to be talking about the fire weather, the drought, and the lack of rain that seems to be plaguing us here in the Carolinas. This is the Carolina Weather Group for Wednesday, April the 15th, 2026. I'm going to just loop your video all day, Tony Rice, because it is amazing to look at. And Artemis II back from its 10-day mission around the moon. And that is your video that you shot there at Kennedy Space Center when it went up on April the 1st. Tony, thanks for coming back on the Carolina Weather Group tonight. It's so great to have you here in the Carolinas and to hear your stories from getting to witness this history.
It was pretty cool, and I'm amazed it went off on the first day, knowing all the complexities here and the challenges of getting it on the pad in the first place and getting it fueled. But we can talk a little bit about that. Some of the things to get there, it's all about lessons learned, and I think that's a good lesson for us all. It's all iterative. It's all, we find problems in the previous missions and previous attempts, and we fix them. And there was several instances of that, but I tell you, after standing out, and it was a gorgeous day out there. It was some of the best weather I've seen. The meteorologists who were standing around me at the press site were very quick to point out, these clouds are coming in. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. This is Florida. This is just how this works. Sea breeze.
So it works.
The clouds spin up a little bit inland. We might get a few sprinkles, but then the heat of the day is going to push everything aside, and it's going to be a beautiful day. That's just the way it works. So when they were putting 80% go days and days, it was to be believed. I mean, those folks have been working down there at the 45th Weather Squadron at the Space Force. They've been working down there forever. They understand those cycles. And then I think it was like 30 minutes before launch, they upped it to 90% go. But the biggest flex that the 45th came up with is we're standing around the press site, 10 o'clock rolls around. That's normally if we're going to see a new weather forecast. It didn't happen. They just let the previous day's forecast stand.
Oh, it was so on point.
Yep. But, I was out there from sunrise to past sunset. We can talk about the traffic going home, too, because I think that tells a story, too. Well, I was very glad not to have to come back the next day.
I want to talk about that because that, I think, was the most surprising part of this for me. Despite the delays to get out to the pad, we were just one and done. But for anybody who missed any part of it, and I'm guessing our audience consumed a lot of it because it was really awesome, NASA has put together a highlight reel, and let's take a look at the highlights from the Artemis II mission. Take a listen.
Taking their first steps outside for their historic test flight.
4 brave explorers ready to ride the most powerful rocket NASA has ever launched.
Reed, Victor, Christina, and Jeremy.
We are going for our families.
We are going for our teammates.
We are going for all humanity.
Engines lit. 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition. And liftoff. The crew of Artemis II now bound for the moon.
Houston integrity. Great view.
This is a test flight, and so every single system aboard Orion is getting tested by humans for the first time. That is Earth in the center of your screen from the Orion spacecraft, looking back at all of us.
Houston is go for TLI.
With this bird to the moon, we do not leave Earth. We choose it.
The 4 of us have looked at this moon our entire lives, and the way we are responding to what we are seeing out the window, it's just like we're a bunch of little kids up here. We cannot get enough of this.
That is something we have never seen before.
It's hard to wrap your mind around. I mean that sincerely. It really bends your mind.
As we prepare to go out of radio communication to all of you down there on Earth and around Earth, we love you from the moon.
Just seeing Tycho, there's mountains to the north. You can see Copernicus, Rainier Gamma. It's just everything from the training, but in 3 dimension and absolutely unbelievable.
Kathy Moonjoy.
Superlative thumbs up.
We just went sci-fi.
I think there is enough for all. The purpose of humanity is joy and lifting one another up, creating together.
This is a whole bunch of nothing, this thing we call the universe. You have this oasis, this beautiful place that we get to exist together.
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, after Ignition, to me, the moment that I'm going to be most excited for is Splashdown. There's no question about that. Good shoots coming down off the West Coast.
And there go the first series of parachutes.
And Houston, we're visual 2 drones out the window.
Main chute deployed.
We most importantly choose this moment to challenge this generation and the next to make sure this record is not long-lived.
This is a relay race.
It takes an army to pull a mission together like this, right? Across all 10 of our centers, all of our commercial partners, the international partners that come together to make this possible.
All right, an Artemis II mission recap put together by NASA, welcoming back in North Carolina-based NASA Ambassador Tony Rice, and also on our Carolina Weather Group panel this week with me from Columbia, South Carolina, is Frank Strait. Now, Tony, there's so much to talk about. I feel like we could talk about Artemis for 3 hours, but you did get a chance to go down to Kennedy, and in a moment we're going to play your video with sound that you put together, because I know you've got a masterpiece of social video here. But just, I guess, give me your overall reaction having watched this for 10 days play out live on YouTube. Thanks 2026. What are your thoughts and feelings about this mission?
So 2 takeaways. I got to drive my little truck and park it at the press site. I got to tailgate at the press site.
That's
which
so cool.
Bucket list item. And it's a little hybrid truck, so I actually ran everything I was doing for WRAL. I did a bunch of stand-ups back for each one of the newscasts for WRAL here in Raleigh. Ran all that out of the 12 volt or 110 volt, I should say, in the back of the truck. So that was awesome. Had everything that I needed right there. That's fun and all, but the thing that I'll really remember is, it's actually 2 things. It's the sound and it's the brightness. So I've seen several robotic launches. One of my bucket list items was seeing a Delta IV Heavy, which is basically the 3 Delta IV rockets more or less bolted together. And that was for the Parker Solar Probe. They needed that extra Delta V to basically break away from Earth's gravity and get that in an orbit where it could get close to the sun. That launched at 2-3 o'clock in the morning, something like that. This was brighter. This was somehow brighter at, still an hour before sunset.
This was one of the few Artemis windows that was daytime.
Yeah, that's an interesting part of this. We ended up leaking just a couple of minutes into the launch window in order to get it off, but it was just so incredibly bright. And that's something that, when people ask what it's like, that's the first thing that comes to my mind. This looks bright when we look at it in the video. Mm-hmm. No video, no images, no nothing do it justice. Our eyes are amazing instruments. And you hear the astronauts talking about that when they're going on the far side of the moon. They talked about it right there. Just the 3D aspect of it. We can send all sorts of probes we want to the moon, but having people there and they're more or less trained geologists at this point with all the training, the information they bring back because of that human sight. But the other thing is the sound. So I've seen 3 shuttle launches and a lot more attempts at shuttle launches, because that's the sound was. We did the math, and actually somebody did a study where they put microphones around Artemis 1 at like 2 miles, 3 miles, and I think it was 4 miles, and measured the pressure, measured how many decibels that thing was putting out, and it compared it to shuttle. It's about twice as loud, roughly about twice. So go ahead and play it with audio, and let's
do that. And then after that, I'm going to bring Frank in because Frank was further away, and I'm curious to know what his sound was like. But let's first play.
Bet it wasn't that different. That's the fun physics.
All right. Well, let's play Tony's video from the Cape and listen here to the launch. Is it just me not hearing it?
Yeah, you may have pulled the first one that did.
Okay.
You pulled a Scotty.
The video pulled a Scotty, which is what we call
sort of
unmuting yourself. All right, well, I'll grab it from your social.
Here's his thought. Let me pull up one with audio, and I'll send it to you.
Okay. Well, Frank, while we do that, let me ask you, you were down towards Titusville, if my memory serves correctly.
That's correct.
And what were you able to hear?
Okay, well, for perspective, I went back and looked it up to make sure I knew where I was. This one end of the ruler over here is the launch pad for Artemis II. It's the 39B, the northernmost one. I was here off of Florida Highway 407 south of Titusville. So according to Google Earth here, this puts me a little under 17 miles away from the launch pad. You certainly had a good view, and it only took maybe 2 or 3 seconds after the launch before the rocket was visible. And however, light travels a lot faster than sound. It was
Isn't that the coolest part?
Many seconds. I didn't time it, but it was many seconds before I heard it. And it was not really loud. It was just a low roar, a rumble. But once it started, you definitely knew it was happening. And it went on for several minutes. You could hear the rocket sound. It was not just a few seconds. It went on for a while. I say several minutes, at least 2 or 3.
Yeah, there's Frank's video right there. I'm replaying some of our live coverage, so you'll see Ricky and Jared's thumbnails off to the side, but it's interlaced with Frank's video there from Titusville, along with what NASA was providing for media. And so, I mean, you got a chance to witness history, Frank, and I understand the very slight delay. As Tony mentioned, we went just a couple minutes into the launch window. That made all the difference for you, Frank, didn't it?
Yes, it did, because of that 10-minute delay. The launch probably would have happened as I was scrambling to get from my car to the apex of that bridge that I was ended up watching it from. That's probably when the launch would have happened, if it would have happened right on time. So I'm grateful that there was a 10-minute delay there.
Yeah, the extra couple minutes. I think, Tony, if I remember correctly, because I just rewatched our coverage, they had, amongst a couple other things, there was like a faulty sensor, and it was just bad data, so they had to make sure that they had the tolerance just to kind of disregard a bad sensor someplace. It was one of a couple small things I think that cropped up.
Yeah, there was a couple batteries, and it was on the launch abort system, and that's that tower that's on the very top of the rocket.
Yeah.
Tested like everything else. That's the when that fires off, everybody's having a really bad day. The purpose of that launch abort system is to literally pluck the capsule off of the rocket when the rocket's about to do a bad thing. Most likely would have been used while it's still on the pad, but it is capable of being used in flight. Launch abort systems have only been used once on a Russian launch, but anyway. So there was a battery that was reading, they call it out of family, one of the sensors on it. And once they saw the reading and saw that it was physically impossible for that battery to have that temperature, that's when they went ahead and said, it's okay, we can go ahead and launch. But other than that, I had a chance to talk with and I'm going to botch the gentleman's name and title, so I'm not going to mention it. Basically, he was one of the leaders within launch control. He had several people that were sitting in launch control, some of those videos that show the prime contractors. And he had several people in some of the back rooms. There's many, many more people supporting a launch than you see that are in that glass-walled launch control center. But he had mentioned that at that point, and this was like 10, 11 o'clock in the morning, they had, I'll say noted, they weren't necessarily working, 30 some items. So there was they were keeping track of. Now, those items can be as mundane as we're hearing a sound out of the rocket that we haven't heard before. They want to make note of that and they want to look into it further. Nothing was precluding launch at that point, but to answer your question, there's a lot of things that are being tracked there, and anything that is of particular concern, they're going to hold the countdown for.
Yeah, I think it's pretty amazing we didn't run into more issues. And I don't mean that as a slam. I just mean, as you mentioned, you have seen more attempted shuttle launches than actual shuttle launches because it's just the nature of the game. It's typically something snags, something holds up.
Yeah.
I mean, there were delays in getting to the launch on April 1st, but this was the first time we got crew out there in this thing. And they went on attempt 1 of 1.
Mm-hmm. And it's a testament to those previous, more tests than attempts. Because if you think back to the fueling attempts or fueling test,
yes,
we went through a couple of those. And that all comes down to hydrogen is just a bear to deal with. It's a wonderful fuel in that it concentrates a lot of energy in one place. That's why it's used. But it's a little molecule, so it wants to leak. And what came out of lessons learned from those fueling tests were different procedures, different ways of fueling a rocket, different ways of chilling down the lines, so everything's at the right temperature and leaks are less likely to occur. Again, after those lessons learned and applying them, we made it through the fueling process without any issues, and we're able to go. You might be interested to know too that we've heard some of these launch weather forecasts that come out. We're talking about the 80% go, and ultimately it was a 90% go. There's a launch weather forecast that comes out for fueling as well. They won't fuel unless the conditions are right. A lot of it has to do with lightning, potential for lightning with very volatile fuels there. But that's one of the things that the 45th does is provide fueling forecasts.
Well, in January, I think we ran into a fueling test that was delayed because of frigid temperatures, if my brain recalls correctly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, temperature is a very big concern when it comes to fueling that rocket, again, because of the temperatures of those fuels.
I'm going to re-rack some of the video here that NASA put together showing us again the launch that happened April 1st. The astronauts returning home after a 10-day mission around the moon, a test flight for the Artemis mission, which now sets boots to return to the lunar surface in 2028 on Artemis 4. Still getting used to saying that, Tony, after NASA updated that from Artemis 3, which will now be a low Earth orbit mission to test the docking systems. There's so much I want to ask you. I'm trying to think of what to ask you next. But I know right before we came on, you were talking to me about some of the things you witnessed there at the launch site. And one of them was the Cessna airplane that NASA was using to provide, amongst other things, live coverage of the mission. And tell us a little about it. I'm going to play the video that NASA put out. This is the video just from the airplane. By the way, it's an 8K and my computer is really freaking out.
Yeah, and that's kind of the story here is how just incredible these images were and how high quality they were. And as this happens, I want everybody to notice what happened. We'll talk about that first. You see that what looks like smoke? That's steam. And what's happening, if you look off to the left-hand side, you can see what looks like a water tower, but it doesn't look like a water tower that's in your local downtown, especially that pipe that's coming down off of it. That is a really large pipe. You could walk through that thing. It's big enough. I think it's got a diameter of about 8 feet. It dumps close to 500 million gallons of water onto the pad. Now, you would think that, so what you're seeing there is steam. It's not smoke. You would think that the purpose of that would be, we see this great fireball coming out. That would be for cooling the pad. Not really. The pad, the flame trench beneath it that directs that flame out into the Atlantic Ocean, that's all got refractory bricks in it. Very high temperature bricks that can handle that heat just fine. That's there for sound. It is totally there to have the uneven surface of the water prevent the sound of that. Rick and I were just talking about that incredible sound that he heard. Was it 14 some miles away? It was pretty
almost 17, yeah.
Even better. that crackle that you're hearing from the sound, those are little mini sonic booms. That's that air moving out of that plume faster than the air around it and causing sonic booms. So that crackle, the first time I saw a rocket launch, I was like, it doesn't sound like that. We're probably hearing pressure that's affecting the microphones. And no, it doesn't really sound like, no, it absolutely does sound like that. And I experienced the same thing that Frank did. As it was ascending, you expect sound to go away. Not only did we hear it literally halfway to space, about 4 to 5 minutes. It takes about 8 minutes to get to space. You continue hearing it that whole time. And it was such a clear day that we it the whole time. We could actually see those solid rocket motors, the pencil-looking things on the white on the side. We could see those separate clearly from the ground.
Yeah, talk to me a little bit, I guess, about the different stages. I do have another video I will play that shows, I think, some unique camera angles from the launch itself. Let me go ahead and put this on the screen here.
Yeah, so that's on the side of the core stage. Yeah, that's the first thing that's going to destage after the solids detach. That video we saw before, that was from the Cessna Caravan that flew an absolute perfect circle at about 3 and I'll see if I can find an image of that to share with you. But it was an absolute perfect circle. We were looking at it on one of the ADS-B viewers sitting at the press site, and like that's a good pilot. Actually, it's a good autopilot, and everything was still enough he could absolutely pull that off. There was some NASA helicopters in the air that were getting video in the parking lot, and I could kick myself for not getting a picture of this thing. Picture the longest camera lens you have ever seen.
Okay.
Mounted on a trailer, but on the trailer, the mount is actually what looks like an anti-aircraft gun.
Yep.
So it's alt azimuth, and it's there to follow the rocket up. So that's how they get those long shots that you see. But that orbiting Caravan, that orbiting Cessna, just got some absolutely amazing video. And we saw some really cool aircraft video for the landing too. I'm sure you're gonna get to the landing.
Yeah, I was going to get to the landing in just a moment. I'm briefly now trying to look in my my Google photo history because I got to go to a crewed launch, and I saw exactly what you described. Those things that look like anti-aircraft guns but are a camera lens. I also don't know that I took a picture of them. Probably because I was worried about getting yelled at.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's okay. There's one of them on display from the Apollo era at the Visitors Conference. If you ever make it down there, it's really cool to see.
Let's talk about Splashdown because we actually got a new video that came out just this week, and new videos are still surfacing from the mission. There's just so much multimedia, and this is the moment the astronauts returned to Earth and saw other human beings for the first time in 10 days. The recovery crew out there off the coast of San Diego in the Pacific Ocean, and I love seeing their smiling faces here once this camera goes inside Orion in just a moment. Tony, your thoughts as we watch this?
Yeah, so we're looking at a boat full of doctors and divers, basically. So these are some NASA personnel, but a lot of Navy personnel there as well. And they're very eager to get in, make sure everybody's okay. They actually started some of the medical evaluations because in addition to kicking the tires on this Orion capsule, there was some experiments being done here, including on the human body. This is the first time that humans have been outside of the protective cocoon, really, that we're in, the magnetosphere that protects us from solar radiation. So there was a lot of measurement that had to be done there. There were sensors on board. If we want to get back to the moon, and that's certainly the goal with Artemis III and Artemis IV, but Artemis program is really not just about getting to the moon. It's about getting onto Mars. So we need to understand what this radiation exposure is on these astronauts. But the boat that they were standing on, they actually called the front porch. It was there to help get the astronauts out, and you can see everybody's high-fiving. Yeah, we were talking about this earlier. Notice that little yellow fob on the end of that key that's used to open up the capsule. That cracked me up because if you've ever gone fishing or been boating, you need to have one of those on your keys so you don't walk home. it would be pretty bad if they had to send somebody back out there with another key. So they
The
can't.
whole world watching. Oh, we've lost the key. Tony, the other thing that strikes me about this video is we had watched them on YouTube for most of their mission. It was kind of like watching Big Brother Space Edition. And we could see them in the Orion space capsule as they went to the moon and then on their way back. And I was trying to get a grasp for how big the Orion capsule was, but it was kind of hard to tell in that static kind of like fisheye camera that they were using. This gives us an interesting perspective because we can kind of see
ballpark
now.
double the size of Apollo. Ballpark.
Double the size of Apollo. Okay. And now
roughly,
let me ask you, because I don't fully grasp this. I know right before they splashed down, they had to release the service module they were attached to. So we're seeing them here in this video inside Orion. We can see where their seats are and so on and so forth. Is this the entire space they had for 10 days, or were they also going into the service module during the mission to have a little bit extra space?
I don't know how that was configured for Artemis II, fortunately. One thing to point out, though, in here, this is actually kind of the minimum space, if you will, because they can actually move those seats around some, and they can get a little more space that's available to them during the mission.
Somewhere in here is the infamous space toilet, I presume.
It's right under the steps. So under the door, under that hatch, the two things that are important to them there are the rowing machine that they actually test. They're only gone for 10 days, so they can skip leg day, they can skip arm day for a week. Not a big deal there, but they were testing it out because that's absolutely going to be something that's going to be necessary when we go to Mars, because muscles just waste away when they're not being used. But underneath there, under the floor, pretty much, they have some privacy down there. That's where the space toilet is.
You mentioned they're exercising their muscles. We saw them on their feet a little bit during the live coverage or in the immediate aftermath, and then we saw them standing up at the news conference the next day. I am uneducated, and maybe you can help me. I was impressed to see them up on their feet moving around, because I'm so used to watching crewed missions come back where you see them come out of Dragon and they immediately go onto like a wheelchair or a gurney and they get wheeled away. Those astronauts are coming back from 6+ months in space. These astronauts are coming back from 10 days. So is that the difference?
That's the difference. And if you go back and look at some of the video of them moving across the deck of that amphibious lander ship that was supporting the mission on that flight deck that they landed the choppers on, person falling behind them with a wheelchair if necessary, but they didn't need it. They had their earth legs, their sea legs back pretty quickly. But yes, 10 days is not a lot of time. So if you go back and look at some of the shuttle missions that were fairly short duration as well, they were able to get back on their feet. But it does take them a minute to get back to. You got to get your inner ear back used to it. They had been bobbing around in that capsule for a little while as well, so I'm sure that's challenging.
That was my thought too. You just survived 10 days in space, and now we're gonna have you bobbing up and down on the waves out here. So
Or
gonna have a strong stomach
on the land, and we have tested that. But just logistically, it makes so much more sense to land off the coast of San Diego. And the Navy is a wonderful partner that goes out there with their Seahawks, which is the Navy version of the Black Hawk, and will be able to pull them back in.
Yeah, you speaking of logistics, here's Flight Radar 24, and you can see a lot of the assets that are out there. Navy, NASA, it looks like Border Patrol maybe was also out there, Air Force. It was a whole, I mean, I guess this is obvious, but it was a whole military operation playing out there.
Every branch of the U.S. military was involved in this. The Air Force is providing support here. The Air Force provided range support during the launch. The Space Force, obviously. The 45th Weather Squadron from Cape Canaveral was on the deck of the ship supporting weather forecasting for the landing. And I thought this was brilliant of them. They handed that last weather balloon to be launched to the NASA director and let him release it from the deck of the ship. The Coast Guard was helping prevent, if we think back to the first crewed Dragon, and the chaos with private boaters, they did not want that to happen around the Artemis crew.
Right.
So the Coast Guard was helpful there. The aircraft assets during descent and splashdown, there was a Canberra, which is an absolutely amazing reconnaissance aircraft from the 60s. That is, I think there's only 4 of them left. One of them belly landed a couple of months ago, so I'm sure it's still getting repaired. But it has supported both Dragon reentries, and it, of course, supported. So these first black and white images we saw during Splashdown, those were coming from the Canberra. There was also two Seahawks that were orbiting around the area that were named Imagery 21 and Imagery 22. Those were their call signs. They were camera ships. They were there to provide this image you're seeing right here was from one of those Seahawks. The 2 more Seahawks that were labeled Recovery 11 and Recovery 12, they were what actually gave the astronauts a ride back shipboard. But there was a Air Force aircraft that might be transferred to NASA. I'm not sure what's going to happen with it. It was most often seen over Nevada during testing and development of stealth aircraft. So it is a 737, not like any of the 737s you see Southwest flying in and out of or Charlotte. It has this really bulbous extended nose, and there's another one on the tail. It measures radar cross signatures. So it was out there flying under NASA call sign, watching this capsule come in, watching the presumably grabbing radar images, and also understanding how this heat shield is performing, which is another improvement that was made.
Yeah, the images I thought were fascinating. Obviously, I'm a TV production nerd, but I also thought it was a little bit of an interesting insight into our capabilities as a government, because we as the public don't typically see military operations playing out live. And if you think about this as a military operation, it was a snapshot into, wow, these are really good camera shots that we are getting out from the middle of the ocean right now. They get some really good stuff. But let me ask you about the heat shield, because that was one of the big concerns, may I say, going into Artemis 2, based on what we learned from Artemis 1. We're still waiting on the full results to come out, but I know NASA Ambassador
We'll learn things from it.
What was that?
We'll learn things from Artemis 2 as well.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it was in fact a test mission, right? So what are your thoughts on what we know thus far about how the heat shield performed?
So initial views of it, and again, we're going to have to wait until the full analysis is done. It looked like it performed pretty well. When we look back at what we learned from Artemis 1, there were some chunks missing. And that tells us that the heat shield did not perform the way that they expected to. It's called an ablative heat shield. Its purpose is to wear away, but that wear needs to be even. It basically melts off those polymers and such to take the energy, both the heat and kinetic energy, away during the reentry. It's coming in at 25,000 miles an hour and it hits the ocean at 17. And you got to get that delta down some way. Most of the way you get that down is with the heat shield. It's peeling off that energy. Now, the parachutes, of course, are doing a big part of that job, but most of it is the heat shield. What they learned from the cracks and the chunks that they saw out of Artemis 1 was less about the makeup of that heat shield and how it was used. So during Artemis 2, we actually bounced the capsule off the atmosphere a bit. It came down, certainly not ballistically, but it came down at an angle that allowed it to bounce back up in altitude a bit and peel a little more of that energy off. And that reduced those temperatures. It performed a lot better. The temperatures were looking better during Artemis 2 versus Artemis 1.
I think I heard the splashdown described as the most dangerous part of the whole mission. And there was lots of dangerous parts of going to space. And it is such a relief. I didn't realize I was carrying such a stress about it until I saw them in the water. And I just kind of felt it leave my body. And I went, oh, I didn't realize I've been carrying that for 10 days.
So I've been asked about that. What were my feelings during the splashdown? I didn't share that stress, and I've given a lot. I think the reason for it is I've been following this mission a long, long time and hadn't really thought about it. I've seen 2 splashdown tests up at Langley, at the Langley Research Center in Hampton. There's a 20-foot deep, 100-foot long pool that is test. They will sling a boilerplate model of the capsule that's accurate and in weight and balance and all that sort of thing off of the same, they call it the gantry. It's a 20-story tall metal structure that was used for the Apollo astronauts to practice spacewalking because it can remove 5/6 of your gravity. That's the way it's designed. And also practice landing the lunar lander. So they slung that into this pool. I think my shoes are still wet from that splashdown because the water goes everywhere. The first splashdown test I saw purposely tipped the capsule over. They threw it in dozens of times at different angles. So where I'm going with that is when I saw it splash down, I'd seen it happen the wrong way enough times and the right way a couple of times. I'm like, oh, okay, we've got some confidence it's going to work this way. It wasn't quite as amazing, which maybe is a little bit sad, but that's kind of where my head was.
That is good perspective and good advice, and I have to imagine the astronauts carried a similar thought because I also wonder what was going through their head during.
That's where their confidence comes from, is lots and lots of training and having seen all of this before and seeing the worst of it.
Yeah. Well, Tony, before we let you go, we'll just show a couple of the amazing pictures. the Earthrise that was captured. That was a highly anticipated photo, and some of the close-up photos here of the lunar surface. Again, Artemis II mission taking humans further than they've ever gone before, even further than the Apollo missions. And of course, going back to the moon for the first time in 50 years with cameras that are obviously well improved over what we had in the 60s and early 70s. Do you have a favorite photo, Tony?
It's probably this one. Once I saw where this mission was going, when it was planned for, what the lighting might be like, it was natural to compare it back to Apollo 8. It's the same concept. Apollo 8 was also a mission that wasn't going to land. It was kicking the tires on the Apollo capsule. And that's where we got that Christmas Day Earthrise photo. So I was pretty sure they were going to try to get this image here. So it's a favorite of mine. And it also inspired that zero-G indicator, the little stuff wearing the Earth as a hat, inspired by this image here. So this is my favorite. But if you look at the detail and the lunar images there, particularly the craters, you see what our atmosphere does to. I can go outside and I point my telescope at the moon right now. Even if I've got the most expensive telescope out there, I'm not going to get images like this because this is without any atmosphere. So we get a really, really clear, crisp image. And I know the geologists are just going gaga over these images.
I know it became a real geology mission. These astronauts documenting what they were seeing in places the human eyes had not seen before. Tony, I know you teased a little bit that you had, I think, your camera there with you, your telescope camera.
Let me see if I can pull it into frame here. So
I'll make you bigger. Here we go.
There we go.
Wow.
This is the little robotic telescope controlled by an iPhone or an iPad. I set this out on the ground next to all my other cameras that were shooting, shots of my smiling face back to WRAL. Set it up and let it go. It's got enough battery power that it was able to shoot that pad. And I just shot the pad and just left it. That's how we got the smoking launch tower afterwards. Once all of the smoke and steam and everything cleared, and just let it go. And a couple minutes after the launch, I pull up my phone like, ooh, I hope I got this shot. And I looked at it and went, oh, okay, this was worth bringing down here. This was worth to get this image. So that's one that was a bucket list image for me.
I'm going to play your. Go ahead.
Look at the left-hand side. You see those four. Well, you'll notice them when they cut loose, and we'll talk about what they are. Yeah, go ahead and roll it.
I think it is rolling. We're just building up anticipation. This is the emailed copy you sent me, so I will play it with sound in a moment. Okay, here we go.
There we go. Yeah, you see those letting loose? Those are the baskets that are for egress, emergency egress. And once it's launched, they're not needed anymore. If there is an emergency, they're going to go ahead and use that tower on top of the rocket. And they basically release them to get them out of the way so they're not damaged. was a couple of questions after lunch. What were those things that came loose? Yeah, that's what it was. It was it's basically a big zip line that gets them away from the tower. And they've got some armored personnel carriers that they load into and drive away as quickly as possible.
I'm going to roll this. I'm going to roll this back. I think I have sound now in this video that you made, and let's take a listen to it here together.
And here we go. 10, 9, 8, 7. RS-25 engines lit. 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition. And liftoff. The crew of Artemis II now bound for the moon. Humanity's next great voyage begins.
So you heard them were being lit. They shuttle engines. All of them have either flown on a shuttle mission before, or they were made from parts that were made for shuttle. They're actually light those engines, and they are running at full capacity while the rocket is still bolted down.
Wow.
And frangible bolts that are big as my arm that explode to release the rocket. That happens when you light the solids. Once you light the solids, you can't turn them off. So you're committed, you're leaving. But they can cut those RS-25s off if they need to. And that has happened before. They have cut fuel to the RS-25s and let that thing sit on the pad for what's a computer. Basically, at that point, computers are running everything. It's just too many things are happening too fast. A computer decided something wasn't right. And as long as that can happen before they light the solids, they can actually abort the mission. That didn't happen this time. We got to go home that evening. We should talk about that real quick. So
sure.
Up on one of the bridges to see that 17 some miles.
Was that a question for Frank? Were you up on a bridge, Frank?
For Frank, yeah.
Right. Yeah, it was about 15 feet above the rest of the terrain in the area because I was on top of a bridge.
Okay, so you may not have been the place that I saw. I believe it was the town of Titusville. Closed down a couple of the bridges over, I think it's the Banana River, and there were thousands of people up on that bridge. And that really gave how many people were down there. How long were you staying in Orlando or Space Coast? Or?
Yeah, I was in Orlando for a conference and drove over there from Orlando that afternoon.
Get home.
I'm sorry?
How long did it take you to get home after the launch?
Well, I didn't really go directly back because I was hungry and wanted to stop at dinner, get some dinner. So I stopped at Steak and Shake. But getting there,
there's better. Talk to me beforehand before you go back down there.
All right. Yeah, the route I took coming out of Orlando, I just did what Google Maps told me to do, and at first it was like, oh, I'm going to be there in an hour, no problem. That was at 4:20, and then as I got to the Orlando airport, things really started to slow down because rush hour traffic suddenly dumped onto the road I was on, and everything slowed down, and I ended up not getting all the way to Titusville.
From Titusville back to Orlando, how was it?
That wasn't bad. There was some traffic. I mean, I waited a good 30 minutes after the launch before I left, and most people had left by the time I left. There were only I think, one or two people still hanging out on that bridge.
End of it, and because I've heard stories of people who left they waited it out. I mean, the launch happened 6:30-ish. They waited it out a couple hours, getting home at 4:30 in the morning. Closer into the Space Center. It was 30 minutes from the press site. It took me 30 minutes to get in the morning from my Airbnb, which was a couple of blocks south of the port. So they're in Cape Canaveral. It took me 30 minutes to get into the press site. I just rolled right in, show my media credentials, roll in, no problem there. It took me 2.5 hours to get back there, back to the. And I bring this up because it's a story to tell, but also it kind of speaks to how much interest there was in this. I think.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you were able to get out of there quick. You got ahead of it, basically. So good on you.
Right. Well, I didn't get all the way into Titusville, so I ended up just I saw that time was running short, and so I'm like, well, I guess I'm just going to pull over and watch from the side of the road, and maybe there'll be a high spot or bridge somewhere. And lo and behold, I saw everybody pulling over, and I thought, well, I guess it's legal to just pull over on this particular road, unlike an interstate. So I just did what everybody else was doing and ran over to the bridge, and ended up having a pretty good view, despite being 17 miles away.
And you got to see proof that the Earth's round too, since you didn't see it for a couple of seconds after it launched.
Right. And I'm not sure exactly how long it was, because you didn't hear it when the launch occurred, and I'm assuming it was just a couple of seconds before the rocket became visible after launch, but I don't know, because there would have been something of a delay from any broadcast that I could have watched and wasn't watching. Right. I was just focused on trying to film the launch.
Very cool.
I thought you were going to say that you were still sitting in traffic trying to get home 15 days later.
That was close. And everybody was warned. The locals down there, they know that it's going to be very, very busy. We knew that was going to happen back during the first Dragon crewed missions. But this one, and Artemis 4 will be even bigger, I think.
I think you're right. I'm looking forward to it. Maybe I can be there. I'll book it now.
You should. And try to book Airbnb or your hotels ahead of time. I lucked out and got my Airbnb for a song. And it was 2 blocks from the beach, and I took advantage of that. Even though it was a little chilly in the evenings, it gave me somewhere to go and unwind. When I looked at hotel prices, easily $500-600 a night, $100 hotel. Yeah, so plan ahead.
I'll start saving. Tony, I appreciate all of your time and your insights as always.
Sir.
They're always a treasure. And if NASA holds to the new timeline they put out, I think we're going to be seeing more and more of these.
That's the goal. And timelines are made to be broken, because you can't ungo once you go. So they want to make sure everything is safe and ready to go. So we're fortunate everything aligned properly, especially weather. Roughly of the scrubs are due to weather. So I go on and on about how beautiful the weather was that day. And this plume afterwards just hung around for hours afterwards. The winds were so still, but we really.
What a beautiful day. I'm excited for the next one. Excited for what comes next. And I know on Monday they're rolling out one of the pieces of Artemis 3 out in New Orleans. So we're going to turn to the next chapter now.
And that was the other reason I wasn't worried about it, because I actually saw the Artemis 1 hardware roll out of the Michaud assembly facility down in New Orleans, like you're talking about. Oh, that's a big rocket.
It is a big rocket. So if you're just getting into all this space fun and you got hooked on Artemis 2, know that Artemis 3, that story starts now. So you can find all of that over at nasa.gov with lots of stuff. And by the way, a lot of the pictures and videos we've been showing you tonight, if you want to roll up your sleeves and look at this in 8K from all different angles, images.nasa.gov will fill up your hard drive very quickly. Tony, thanks again for your time.
Thanks for having me. Tell me when I don't have to water my lawn again, and when I don't have to.
Well, that is exactly what we're going to talk about next. You're welcome to stay if you want, because I know Frank's itching to give us the forecast. Which, Frank, does your forecast have any raindrops in it?
Eventually, yes.
Okay, I'm very anxious to hear when these raindrops are coming. Could you please enlighten us? I'm getting worried.
Well, I'm already worried. I've kind of been worried because it's been a really dry month and a half, and it's going to be a while before we have a chance of substantial rain. We do have a kind of a low end rain opportunity coming our way on Sunday as a cold front moves through. Looking at the visible, or rather the infrared satellite view here, you can see the cold front in question. Well, at least in the northern part of this is a cold front. Down in Texas, it's more of a dry line that's causing the thunderstorms. Again, we're looking at infrared satellite imagery, so you're looking at temperatures. The brighter colors are colder cloud tops. They are higher up in the atmosphere, so that's where the thunderstorms are, and there are some severe storms, including tornadoes going over the nation's midsection. I think earlier there was a tornado in or near Milwaukee. So that was kind of scary for them, and looks as though we're going to have more severe weather along this front as it slowly shifts eastward in the coming days. However, it is going to weaken by the time it gets to us on Sunday. So don't get worried about any significant severe weather happening here in the Carolinas. I don't think that is in the cards. But anyway, looking at precipitation here, let me switch this view to both Carolinas instead of South Carolina. So that you can get an idea of what we're looking at. Okay, this is percent of normal rainfall over the last 60 days. And there is really almost no place in the Carolinas that's had normal rainfall. There's one spot there in Barnwell County, South Carolina, that's very close to normal rainfall. Elsewhere around the Carolinas, it's below normal, and most of it's way below normal. Asheville is about half normal rain, so is Rutherfordton there. Down here in South Carolina or Columbia, we're at about half normal rainfall. The PD region's very dry. The Low Country is probably the driest area of the Carolinas, with a lot of areas only around a fourth of normal rainfall over the last 60 days. And if you want to go back only, say, the last 7 days, you end up with a bunch of goose eggs because it hasn't rained for at least a week over a lot of the Carolinas at this point. So we need rain. However, we're not going to get it until that cold front gets to us on Sunday. Instead, we're staying dry, mainly sunny, and continued warm to hot even. Like, for example, here in Columbia, 92 was the high today. That's somewhere around 15 degrees above normal for us, and a daily record high, and not actually far away from the record high for April here, which is 96 here in Columbia. So that's an example of what we're dealing with, and it's only going to get actually hotter over the next couple of days. My recollection, James, is that y'all were 89 in Charlotte today. That was a record high.
Yeah, we tied. I think we tied. 89 would have been a tie. 90 would have been a record. And I actually, well, let's look, ladies and gentlemen. I pinged the weather service at one point and I said, "Hey, I'm seeing in the 15-minute obs, it says 90." But sometimes those 15-minute obs need a little.
You mean the 5-minute obs?
Oh yeah, you're right. The 5-minute
obs. Those highly deceptive 5-minute obs that sometimes show the wrong temperature.
Yeah, well, that's why I was like, I think the answer is that we tied.
Correct.
Yeah.
So the reason that happens is because those 5-minute observations are taken to the nearest degree Celsius, or they're reported to the nearest degree Celsius. They're taken to the nearest tenth of a degree Celsius, but they're reported to the nearest degree Celsius, and then the system rounds that to the nearest degree Fahrenheit, which can result in a rounding error.
So they did. I'm looking here at the response from Greenville Spartanburg, and it's what you just explained with the numbers. So the 90 degree in the 5-minute obs was a rounding up of 31.7 Celsius to 32, which converted to 90.
Right. But the actual high was 31.7 Fahrenheit or Celsius, which converts to probably 89.4 Fahrenheit, so something like that. So you probably just barely missed it. Yeah. So anyway, so that's the story of Charlotte and Columbia's heat. By the way, it's our first, and here in Columbia, it was our first 90 plus of the year.
Well,
we had an 89 once, but surprisingly, we haven't gotten to 90 yet, as dry as it's been, and we've had some pretty warm days. But anyway, 92 today, and it only goes up from there. Where did I put the South Carolina statewide maps? There we go. This is Thursday, 92 again for Columbia. 90s over a lot of South Carolina. Friday, even a little hotter. And then Saturday is likely to be the hottest day. Check that out here in Columbia, 95 for a high, which is one off our April record, assuming we get there. By the way, hottest on record in April in all of South Carolina is 99, which has happened a few times.
Well,
it does not look like we will get to that anywhere, but again, we're in shouting distance. This is remarkably warm for April, or hot. I will use the word hot since we're getting to the mid-90s.
All right, and we're going to talk about how dry it is and the downside of that in just a second.
Right, that's the other side.
If there's a silver lining, it's that it's not humid. It's comfortable.
Right. Well, it's good that it's not humid because that doesn't make it even more comfortable. However, with those dew points only in the 50s, that makes it dry things out even faster than it would otherwise do when it's in the 90s. So your vegetation is really going to get desiccated over the next few days. One thing you couldn't see on the infrared satellite view is that we actually do have a handful of wildfires around South Carolina.
Yeah.
The only one that's significant is in southern Marion County. That's from my cursor, it's about right there. And the smoke has been going east into Horry County and then along the North Carolina coast toward Wilmington. So the air quality's been kind of crummy in those areas over the last few days. Yeah, there's watch duty. It's the Marion Woodbury Wire Road fire.
1,700 acres.
Yeah, it's a fairly big fire.
That is a big fire.
I think it's mostly contained now, but they are
60% containment as of a day ago.
Yeah, it has been a struggle because it's been so dry and thankfully not very windy, but it's been a little breezy, so it's been a struggle to get that fire even somewhat contained.
I'm going to move our faces out of the way because just the log from the updates, the volunteers and the officials who update over here at watchduty.org, this just jumps out to me, right? It's on April 14th, which was yesterday for our live show. So Tuesday, this incident has been reactivated due to a decrease in containment. It is now 200 acres and 60% containment. That was 11:20 a.m. yesterday. And then at 12:58 p.m. yesterday, acreage updated from 200 acres to 1,750 acres.
Right. And there's two reasons for that. The first, the fire did get bigger, but also they did I can't remember the term they use, but they did one of these sort of like a prescribed burn, a fire break kind of thing, because they found that there was in the path of where the fire was going, that there was a lot of fuel available, and they didn't want it for the wind to pick up and the fire to spread into it in an uncontrolled manner. So they burned it in a controlled manner, but that results in a large increase of the acreage burned.
Yeah. But that is a lot of acres.
Yes, and you can see there's other fires in North Carolina too, and a few smaller ones in South Carolina. Thankfully, it has not been extremely dry. It's not been humid by any stretch, but our relative humidity's been kind of in the 30 to 40% range dry, but not desert like with relative humidities in the teens, which would be really bad for potential fire growth. It also has not been terribly windy. Again, a breeze has been blowing most days, but it hasn't been 35 to 40 mile an hour winds, which can really cause a fire to spread very rapidly, especially as dry as it is. So a situation that could have been worse, but certainly bad enough.
Yeah. North Carolina is reminding everyone of their statewide burn ban. And you guys have an equivalent in South Carolina, right?
We had one. I don't think it's in effect now, but it's outdoor burning is very highly discouraged right now.
Yeah,
for sure.
Okay. Well, yes. Either way, discouraged is certainly a good way to put it. The burn ban in North Carolina: no outside fires, no campfires, no burning of debris. Charcoal grills, little tiny grills are okay, I think, as long as they have like a lid on them. But I grilled some things the other day in my backyard, and I stood there attentively, knowing, but that it could be bad. So really no relief in sight, Frank. And the drought monitor comes out tomorrow, Thursday, April 16th. And we've got parts of the Carolinas in the current edition of the drought monitor that have been in that extreme range for the last couple updates. Do you have a prediction, Frank, what this map might look like tomorrow?
Well, no doubt there's going to be some worsening of the drought and expansion of the D2 and D3 areas. I expect that we'll finally get all of South Carolina into full-blown drought, at least D1 with the new one that's coming out. I don't know if we're going to see any areas go to D4 or not. A possibility, which I think it would be the first time since November of 2016 that we've seen a D4 in South Carolina, if that were to be the case. With very little rain on the way, certainly it's likely to get worse still next week. So if we don't see any D4 areas tomorrow, then next Thursday, there's a good chance that we will. So yeah, no doubt it will worsen, and no doubt it will get even worse before things start to improve.
We had a conversation in the Charlotte subreddit play out the other day, and people were asking, "Okay, yeah, I get it. Drop map. Like, what does that mean? Like, how does that impact me?" And now we're starting to see what those impacts are going to look like. So today, Wednesday, April the 15th, the city of Raleigh announcing stage 1 water restrictions as the drought conditions continue to persist. And this is in effect until at least April 20th, they write. I would have to imagine this is going to get extended based on the forecast that you gave us. But this restricts the use of outdoor watering, hose use, washing your car, restricts restaurants from not automatically putting water on the table unless it is asked for, asking hotels and motels to try to reuse towels and bed sheets as much as can be done. And so I think Raleigh is maybe the biggest city so far we have seen put out water restrictions. I've seen some of them in Iredell County, North Carolina. I'll also tell you, Frank, we've been talking to the city of Monroe in Union County, North Carolina. They have their own water source, and this is one of them here, Lake Monroe. And you can see, if you're watching along with us here on Facebook and YouTube, how low that lake is when you look at the shoreline.
Mhm.
And I think if I click on through, there it is, the fishing pier that is up on dry land because the water is so low.
Right. And we're seeing the same kind of thing happen in South Carolina too. Stream flow is very low all across South Carolina right now. And as a result, the lake levels have started to drop. And that's also something that's going to deteriorate before it gets better, because there's, at least for the next week, no significant rain on the way.
Yeah, certainly so. We were seeing low Stream Creek levels here in North Carolina too. So I think our message to all you watching at home, whether you're in an official burn ban or not, please be careful. Fire right now is a high risk because of those weather conditions we've been telling you about, the low humidity, the lack of rain, especially if we were to get gusty, windy weather once again, that would help start and spread a fire. And if you, as best as you can, conserve the water, whether you need to or not officially. There are probably places that a lot of us could cut back on our water usage. And I think the more we cut back and save now, the better position we'll be in later. I got laughed at, Frank, at work the other day because I said, guys, I got a new rain barrel so that I can, water some things with my own reserve of rain. And somebody said, you got a new rain barrel? I said, yeah. They go, so it's empty? And I went, yeah, it's empty.
Right. If you have a nearby creek that still has water flowing in it, you can take a bucket down there and fill it up and carry it up your rain barrel, pour it in the rain barrel, do that 40 times, and then you might have a little bit of water.
My last PSA, now that we're coming into springtime weather, sunblock, folks, if you're watching with us tonight, wondering why James's head is glowing red. I stood in the sun for about 4 hours yesterday, and I forgot my Carolina Weather Group hat, and I'm paying the price for it.
Same thing for me. I was out playing pickleball Sunday afternoon, starting at 1:30, the strongest sun angle of the day. And I remembered my sunscreen, but for those of you who have done things that make you sweaty when you're outdoors, you probably know that if you put sunscreen anywhere up in here, that it ends up going in there, and it's a serious eye irritant, that sunscreen is, and you're not able to see for a while if that happens. So you can't put sunscreen up here if you're playing pickleball or doing anything else that's strenuous.
I should have brought a hat. Can you see if I pull my hair back, you can actually see the contrast?
Oh, it's red. It's definitely red. I might still be a little red because I got burnt pretty good on Sunday.
Yeah,
it's
started
to heal up now, but
my bad.
From here on down on my body, I was fine because I had sunscreen.
There are some dermatologists who are watching our show right now yelling at me, and I want you to know I hear you. I feel you. That was dumb of me.
Yeah.
So it's that time of year, folks.
Right.
Also, buy a hat. QR code's next to Frank.
Buy one of our hats.
I didn't.
And
do
remember
this for the
to take it with you.
Unlike your handy dandy leader here, who
your illustrious panelists here.
Yeah.
forgot to
forgetting
take
to-
said hat.
Yeah.
I remembered it on Monday when I played, or sorry, yesterday evening when I played. Remembered
was-
it then.
This is warm. My head is warm.
Mine
So-
was yesterday. I posted it on Twitter, X, and Frank Alsheimer of the Weather Service Office in Columbia replied with a meme of someone frying an egg on the top of their head, which is pretty much how my scalp felt.
They posted the other day on social, like, yes, our radar's down and the technicians are coming to look at it. And I don't know if they found it funny or not, but I wrote back, that's okay. It doesn't rain anymore. Who needs a radar? We're not tracking anything right now. All right. Well, my New
You
Year's
got more
resolution
forecast
is
stuff to talk about.
You got more forecast stuff to talk about, but I'm
Yeah,
running
I
the
do.
ticker. Okay. All right.
Okay, first, North Carolina's highs. This is Saturday, and so it's going to be pretty hot down by Fayetteville. It can sometimes get about as hot as it does in Columbia. So they're 95 on our hottest day. Saturday. It does cool off after that, and actually some fairly nice, relatively cool days coming up for Sunday through Tuesday before it starts warming up again, and we're back in the 80s. However, our opportunities for rain, like I said, not looking great. Let me switch to right here, and maybe it will load up in a sensible amount of time. But the next front comes through on Sunday, if it will ever load up, because my internet connection's slow because I'm running a bunch of video streams right now. So maybe it will eventually load up and show me that we have that front coming through on Sunday, or maybe not. Anyway, front comes through on Sunday.
Sunday.
Oh, there it skipped all the way out to Tuesday. Thank you very much. Anyway, in the long range, there we go. There's the front coming through the Carolinas on Sunday. If the Euro is to be believed, we're getting some showers over the Western Carolinas on Sunday morning. Midday, we see some showers and maybe even a thunderstorm in spots. In the afternoon, could see a gusty storm, and someone surprised me if there were some locally damaging winds here and there, but probably not any widespread storms and not a whole lot of rain with them. And then we're in a dry spell for a while after that.
Yeah.
However, in the long range, there is some hope for some rain, some decent rain. And the reason why, let me switch to another weather satellite view. Here's the West Pacific right now.
Whoa.
And we have this critter right here, Sinlaku, the typhoon, the one that hit Saipan and Tinian yesterday. Caused winds well over 100 miles an hour. Courtesy of this thing, we have a chance of rain 8-10 days from now. Reason being, if you've talked to old school weathermen, and I've had contact with a lot of them over the years, when you have a typhoon that wants to take a path like this and recurve east of Japan, that almost always results in a pretty strong upper level trough over the eastern part of North America, 6 to 8 days out. And that's the way it's looking for us. So about a week from now, with a good upper trough in place, we should be keeping things cooler and having some better opportunities for rain. And that's actually exactly what the Euro is showing. So hopefully, again, why is this taking so long to load? But anyway,
Internet's broken.
Yeah, there we go. There's the Euro showing typhoon remnants moving across the southeastern U.S. and potentially causing some rain for us, and also maybe severe weather toward the end of the month. So hopefully that works out. That being said, it would not be the first time that the computer models have been showing a good chance of rain in the long range, and it didn't work out. I remember last week I said, hey, there's light at the end of the tunnel. 10 days from now, it looks like we might get some decent rain opportunities, and not looking like that's going to happen. But again, it's looking like 10, 12, maybe 15 days from now, we'll have some good opportunities for rain. Hopefully it works out this time.
It'd be nice. Can I ask a dumb question?
You can ask any question, whether it's a dumb one or a smart one.
We'll find out. Can you go back to the satellite of the typhoon?
Yes. If I can find it. There it is.
Okay. Across the bottom of the screen, moving from right to left, there is like a whitish opaque orb.
A whitish opaque orb.
Yeah. Do you see it?
And
It comes out of 165 and goes to 145 across the bottom center of the screen.
oh, I see. You're talking
What is
about this down here.
that? What is that?
That's sun glint.
Okay, that was going to be my guess. That it's the sun.
Yeah, it's sunlight being reflected off the sea surface into the weather satellite.
That's cool.
Yeah, yeah, we see it in the Atlantic sometimes too. Often,
That's
actually.
how high resolution this is. We're seeing reflections.
Yeah, well, we saw it on previous generations of weather satellites too. It's actually the even many years ago, back in the 80s and 90s, visible satellite resolution was pretty good. The spatial resolution was pretty good even back then, but it's the temporal resolution, how frequently we could make images, that was not great.
Yeah.
We would get them every, I think, 30 minutes back in the 80s, even though the resolution was, I think, 2 kilometers, which is not much lower than what we have today. But nowadays we can do a full disk scan every 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we could do those mesoscale like every 30 seconds because we saw Artemis launch on a weather satellite like minutes after the launch. Yeah, it was crazy.
Yes. Right. And actually, in those mesoscale sectors, there's 2 of them. Each of them do a scan of that little sector once a minute. You can stack them together and get updates every 30 seconds.
Yeah, I think that's what we did. Yeah, that was pretty cool. All right. Well, Frank, I think we're going to leave it there. That was a very good, meaty discussion with Tony Rice about Artemis. I have so many more questions for him. I could probably do a 3-hour-long podcast. And I appreciate your insights on the heat, the fire weather, the drought. I fear it's going to get worse before it gets better, but I will keep my fingers crossed for that rain at the end of the month.
Yeah, me too. We need it. We're desperate for it, actually.
We really, really are. So be safe at home, take precautions, help conserve water, help not to start a forest fire. All of those things would be greatly appreciated from your neighbors and your family and your friends. And we will see. The drought monitor comes out tomorrow on Thursday. It comes out every Thursday with data from Tuesday to Tuesday. And we definitely didn't get any rain in the past week, so it's going to get uglier. But we'll guide you through it. We'll keep you posted. We'll have updates on social on when the drought monitor comes out and other developments between our weekly shows each week. So on behalf of Frank, I'm James. We will talk to you again next week for another edition of the Carolina Weather Group. Good night.
See ya.